The gunshots had finally stopped, but Violet Adams was certain she was going to die. Sprawled in the dirt beneath the merciless New Mexico sun of 1878, her body ached from the beating she'd endured. Blood trickled from her split lip, and bruises were already forming across her ribs. She could barely move, barely breathe, as the hoofbeats of her attackers faded into the distance, leaving her for dead on the unforgiving prairie. Violet had never imagined she'd end up like this when she'd left Boston 3 weeks earlier. After her father's passing, the letter from her uncle promising work and a fresh start in Silver Creek had seemed like providence. But Uncle Thomas hadn't been at the stagecoach stop to meet her. Instead, 3 men claiming to work for him had offered her a ride to his ranch. Their true intentions became clear when they veered off the main trail into the wilderness. The sun beat down relentlessly as Violet drifted in and out of consciousness. Each breath sent shards of pain through her body. They'd taken everything: her small inheritance, her luggage, even the locket containing her parents' portraits. All that remained was the tattered dress on her back and the fading hope of survival. Sweet, merciful heaven. The deep voice cut through her delirium. Violet's eyes fluttered open to see a broad-shouldered silhouette blocking the sun. A man knelt beside her, his features coming into focus: strong jawline, concerned green eyes beneath the shadow of a well-worn Stetson. "Miss, can you hear me?" His voice was gentle despite its depth. "Don't try to move now." Violet attempted to speak, but only a raspy whisper emerged. "Water, please." The stranger uncorked a canteen and carefully supported her head, allowing her a small sip. "Easy now, I'm Vaughn McKinnon. I've got a ranch about 3 miles east. Going to take you there and get you fixed up. Can you tell me your name?" "Violet," she managed. "Violet Adams." "Miss Adams, I need to move you and it's going to hurt something fierce. I apologize for that, but I can't leave you out here." With extraordinary care, Vaughn lifted her onto his horse, mounting behind her and cradling her against his chest. Each step the horse took sent waves of pain through Violet's battered body, but the solid presence of the cowboy behind her offered an unexpected comfort. "Stay with me, Miss Adams," he murmured as her consciousness began to slip again. "Just a little farther." When Violet next opened her eyes, she was in an unfamiliar room, lying on a soft bed. Clean bandages wrapped her ribs and a cool cloth rested on her forehead. Sunlight streamed through lace curtains, illuminating simple but comfortable furnishings. "You're awake." A gray-haired woman with kind eyes approached the bedside. "I'm Mrs. Porter, Mr. McKinnon's housekeeper. You've been unconscious for nearly 2 days, poor dear. 2 days." Violet's voice cracked. "Mr. McKinnon found you just in time, another few hours in that sun." The older woman shook her head. "But let's not dwell on such things. You're safe now, Mrs." Porter helped Violet sip some broth before explaining that Vaughn had sent for the doctor from town, who had treated her injuries and left medicines for pain. Her bruises were extensive, but thankfully no bones were broken. "Mr. McKinnon has been beside himself with worry," Mrs. Porter confided. "Barely left your side that first night. I've never seen him so affected." As if summoned by her words, a knock sounded at the door and Vaughn entered. Without his hat, Violet could see his full face, handsome in a rugged way, with sandy brown hair and those striking green eyes that showed relief when they met hers. "Miss Adams," he said, removing his hat. "It's good to see you awake. Thank you for saving my life, Mr. McKinnon." He moved closer, pulling a chair beside the bed. "Can you tell me what happened? Who did this to you?" Violet recounted her story, her journey from Boston, the men who claimed to work for her uncle, and the brutal attack when she realized their deception and tried to escape. Vaughn's expression darkened. "Those would be the Hadley brothers and their cousin. They've been troubling these parts for months." He hesitated. "Miss Adams, I hate to be the bearer of more bad news, but I should tell you that Thomas Adams passed away 3 months ago." The shock of this news struck Violet like a physical blow. "But the letter, I received it just 6 weeks ago." I suspect those men intercepted your uncle's correspondence. They've been known to target newcomers to the territory. Vaughn's voice softened. I'm truly sorry. Tears welled in Violet's eyes. Her last remaining family, her last hope for a new beginning gone. What will I do now? She whispered, more to herself than to Vaughn. You'll heal first, he said firmly. You're welcome to stay here as long as necessary. After that, well, we'll figure something out together. Over the next week, Violet gradually regained her strength. Mrs. Porter proved to be a nurturing caretaker, providing nourishing meals and companionship during the long days of recovery. Vaughn visited regularly, often bringing books from his modest library or simply sitting with her, sharing stories of his 10 years in the territory. She learned that he had come west from Pennsylvania after the war, working cattle drives before saving enough to purchase his ranch, the Circle M. Unlike many of the rough men she'd encountered since arriving in the territory, Vaughn was educated and thoughtful, though no less capable in the demanding work of running a ranch. One afternoon, as Violet sat on the front porch watching the sunset paint the distant mountains gold and crimson, Vaughn joined her. "First time out of bed without Mrs. Porter fussing?" he asked with a smile. "I may have sneaked out while she was kneading bread," Violet admitted. "I needed to feel the air," Vaughn chuckled, then grew serious. "Sheriff Daniels rode out today. They caught one of the men who attacked you, the youngest Hadley boy. He's willing to testify against the others in exchange for leniency. Will they find the others, eventually?" "Men like that always make mistakes." He paused. "The sheriff also brought news from town. Seems your situation has become something of a talking point." Violet tensed. "What do you mean? Small towns run on gossip, Miss Adams." "A single man taking in an unmarried woman, even in these circumstances." He shifted uncomfortably. "There's been talk." "Oh," Violet felt heat rising to her cheeks. "I never considered I should leave as soon as possible. Perhaps there's work in town." "That's not what I'm suggesting," Vaughn said quickly. "I have a proposition, though I admit it's unorthodox." He took a deep breath. "The townsfolk are already assuming the worst. What if we gave them something better to talk about instead?" Violet looked at him quizzically. "Marry me," he said plainly. She stared at him, certain she had misheard. "I beg your pardon. It would be a marriage of convenience, of course," he added hastily. "You need security and a home. I need a wife to help run this place. Mrs. Porter is getting on in years, and I've been meaning to hire additional help. Mr. McKinnon, we barely know each other. I know you're brave and resilient. I know you're educated and well-spoken, and I know that Silver Creek isn't kind to women without protection." He met her gaze steadily. "I'm not asking for anything improper. You'd have your own room, your own space, but you'd also have my name and the protection it provides." Violet was speechless. The proposition was indeed unorthodox, yet she couldn't deny the practicality of it. Without family, funds, or connections, her options were severely limited. Working as a shop girl or serving at the saloon, the likely positions available to her would barely provide subsistence. "You don't need to answer now," Vaughn said gently. "Think on it." That night, Violet barely slept, weighing her limited options against Vaughn's unexpected offer. By morning, she had made her decision. "Yes," she told him over breakfast. "I accept your proposal, Mr. McKinnon." Surprise flickered across his face, followed by something that looked almost like pleasure. "You're certain?" "I am. A practical arrangement benefits us both." They were married 3 days later by the circuit judge who happened to be passing through Silver Creek. The ceremony was brief, held in the town's small church with only Mrs. Porter and the sheriff as witnesses. Violet wore a simple blue dress that Mrs. Porter had altered from one of her own, and Vaughn wore his Sunday best. As they stood on the church steps afterward, Vaughn took her hand. "I know this isn't the wedding you dreamed of, but I promise to be a good husband in all the ways that matter." The town's reaction was immediate and exactly as Vaughn had predicted. The story of the battered young woman rescued and then married by Vaughn McKinnon spread like wildfire, transforming from scandal to romance with remarkable speed. When they entered the general store together the following week, Violet on Vaughn's arm, every eye turned their way. "That's the McKinnon bride," she heard one woman whisper. "Found her half dead on the prairie, he did. Romantic, isn't it?" replied another. "Like something from a dime novel." Violet felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment, but Vaughn squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Let them talk," he murmured. "They'll find something new to gossip about soon enough." Life at the Circle settled into a routine. As she healed, Violet gradually took on more responsibilities, working alongside Mrs. Porter in managing the household. She discovered she had a talent for bookkeeping and began organizing Vaughn's chaotic accounts, finding ways to reduce expenses and increase profits. Their arrangement remained respectful and distant. True to his word, Vaughn provided her with her own bedroom and never presumed any marital rights. They shared meals and conversation, but little else. Occasionally, Violet caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher, but he always quickly looked away. As spring turned to summer, Violet found herself increasingly drawn to her stoic husband. She admired his quiet strength, his fairness with his ranch hands, and his unexpected gentleness with injured animals. When he laughed a rare but treasured sound, something fluttered in her chest that she wasn't ready to name. One evening, as they sat on the porch after dinner, a comfortable silence between them, Vaughn suddenly spoke. "I received a letter from the sheriff today. They've captured the remaining Hadley brothers. Your testimony will be needed at their trial next month." Violet tensed. "I'll need to face them." "I'll be with you," Vaughn assured her. "They can't hurt you anymore." She nodded, fighting back tears that suddenly threatened. Vaughn hesitated, then reached across the space between their chairs to take her hand. "Violet," he said softly, the first time he'd used her given name since their wedding. "You're not alone in this." His touch, warm and steady, anchored her. "Thank you, Vaughn." That night marked a subtle shift in their relationship. The formality that had characterized their interactions began to ease. Violet found herself sharing stories of her childhood in Boston, of her father's bookshop where she had spent countless hours, and of the dreams she'd harbored before circumstances had forced her west. In turn, Vaughn revealed more of himself, his experiences in the war, his early struggles in the territory, and his determination to build something lasting on the land he'd come to love. They discovered shared interests in literature and music, and Vaughn unearthed a battered piano from a storage room, which Violet set about tuning and playing in the evenings. The day of the trial arrived hot and dusty. Violet wore her best dress, a navy blue affair that Mrs. Porter had helped her sew, and Vaughn dressed formally in a suit that made him look both distinguished and somewhat uncomfortable. "Ready?" he asked as he helped her into the wagon. "As I'll ever be," she replied, grateful for his steady presence beside her. The courthouse was packed with curious onlookers. Violet felt their stares as she walked down the aisle, but Vaughn's hand at the small of her back gave her strength. When she took the stand and had to recount the attack, she fixed her gaze on Vaughn's encouraging face rather than on the Hadley brothers' sullen expressions. Her testimony was clear and unflinching. When the defense attorney tried to imply that she had somehow invited the attack, Vaughn half rose from his seat, fury evident in his normally composed features. But Violet's calm rebuttal silenced the lawyer more effectively than any objection could have. By day's end, the verdict was announced, guilty on all counts. The Hadley brothers would spend years in territorial prison for their crimes. As they were led away, the youngest caught Violet's eye and mouthed what looked like sorry, but she turned away, unwilling to offer forgiveness. Outside the courthouse, Vaughn drew her into an unexpected embrace. "You were magnificent," he murmured against her hair. Violet allowed herself to lean into his strength, realizing with sudden clarity that her feelings for her husband had grown far beyond gratitude or friendship. The revelation both thrilled and terrified her. The ride home was quiet, both lost in their thoughts. When they arrived at the ranch, Mrs. Porter had a celebratory dinner waiting, and the three of them ate together, the conversation deliberately light after the emotional day. Later, as Violet prepared for bed, a knock sounded at her door. She opened it to find Vaughn standing there, something clutched in his hand. "I have something for you," he said, somewhat awkwardly. The sheriff recovered it from the youngest Hadley's possessions. He held out his hand, revealing a tarnished silver locket. Violet gasped, taking it with trembling fingers. "My parents," she whispered, opening it to reveal the tiny portraits inside. "I thought it was lost forever. He apparently kept it instead of selling it. Small mercies, I suppose." Tears welled in Violet's eyes as she clutched the precious memento. "Thank you," she said, looking up at Vaughn. "For this, for everything." Something in her expression made him pause. He reached out slowly, as if giving her time to pull away, and brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "Violet," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I need to tell you something." Her heart quickened. "Yes, this arrangement between us, it's become more than convenience for me, much more." His green eyes searched hers. "I find myself falling in love with my wife, and I don't know what to do about it." Violet felt as though she couldn't breathe. "You love me." "I do. I understand if you don't feel the same." "Our agreement was clear, and I would never." She silenced him by placing her fingers gently against his lips. "I love you too, Vaughn. I think I have for some time now." The confession hung in the air between them, transforming the space and their relationship in an instant. Vaughn's expression shifted from uncertainty to wonder, and he slowly, reverently, leaned down to place a gentle kiss on her lips. Unlike their perfunctory wedding kiss, this one held promise and passion. Violet's arms wound around his neck as she returned the kiss with equal fervor, years of loneliness and fear melting away in the warmth of their shared affection. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Vaughn rested his forehead against hers. "Well, Mrs. McKinnon," he said softly, "it seems we've shocked the town again." Violet laughed. "How so?" "By turning our marriage of convenience into a love match. That should keep the gossips busy for at least another month." As autumn painted the landscape in golds and reds, the Circle M prospered under their joint stewardship. Violet's bookkeeping had revealed opportunities for expansion, and Vaughn's hard work made those opportunities reality. They added a small orchard, expanded the vegetable garden, and even began raising sheep alongside the cattle, a controversial decision among the neighboring ranchers, but one that proved profitable. Their personal relationship flourished as well. Violet moved her belongings into Vaughn's larger bedroom, and they discovered the joys of truly sharing a life. Their evenings were filled with conversation, music, and increasingly, plans for the future. "What would you think about turning the east pasture into wheat?" Violet asked one evening as they reviewed the account books together at the kitchen table. "Wheat?" Vaughn looked surprised. "That's farming, not ranching. The soil's good there and wheat prices are climbing. We could start small, see how it goes." Vaughn studied her thoughtful expression and smiled. "You're full of surprises, Mrs. McKinnon. Let's try it." As winter approached, bringing with it shorter days and crisp nights, Violet made another discovery, one that filled her with both joy and trepidation. After 3 days of morning sickness that she couldn't hide, she finally shared the news with Vaughn. A baby. His expression transformed from concern to utter delight. "We're having a baby," she nodded, suddenly uncertain. "I know we hadn't planned." Vaughn swept her into his arms, spinning her around the kitchen until she laughed and begged him to stop before she was sick again. He set her down gently, cupping her face in his hands. "Violet McKinnon, you have given me more happiness than I ever thought possible. A child, our child, is the greatest blessing I could imagine." News of the pregnancy spread quickly through Silver Creek, adding another chapter to what the townsfolk now referred to as the McKinnon romance. The story had grown, with each telling Vaughn was now said to have fought off a dozen bandits to rescue Violet, and their wedding was described as a passionate affair following a whirlwind courtship. "Did you hear the latest version?" Violet asked one evening, returning from a trip to town. Apparently, you proposed to me while I was still unconscious, and I woke up and immediately accepted. Vaughn laughed, pulling her close. Well, that would have been more straightforward than my actual bumbling proposal. I loved your proposal, she said softly. It was honest and practical, just like you. And yet somehow I won the heart of a woman who is neither practical nor predictable, he teased, kissing her forehead. Perhaps opposites truly do attract. Spring brought new life to the Circle M calves in the pastures, lambs in the newly built sheep pens, and green shoots in the experimental wheat field. It also brought increasing anticipation as Violet's due date approached. Mrs. Porter fussed over her constantly, insisting she rest more and eat special concoctions meant to ensure a healthy baby. Vaughn was even worse, hovering anxiously whenever Violet so much as stood up too quickly. I'm pregnant, not made of porcelain, she reminded him after he rushed to help her from a chair for the third time in one afternoon. Humor me, he replied, kissing her hand. I nearly lost you once before I even knew you. I can't bear the thought of anything happening to you or our child. His genuine concern melted her irritation. We're fine, both of us, but if it makes you feel better, I promise to be careful. The baby arrived on a warm June night after a labor that left Violet exhausted but triumphant. When the midwife placed their daughter in her arms, Violet felt a love so overwhelming it brought tears to her eyes. She's perfect, Vaughn whispered, perched on the edge of the bed, one arm around Violet and the other gently touching their daughter's tiny hand. Just like her mother. They named her Alina, after Violet's mother, but called her Ellie from the first day. She had Vaughn's green eyes and Violet's auburn hair, a perfect blend of them both. News of Ellie's birth brought visitors from all over the county, eager to see the newest addition to what had become Silver Creek's favorite love story. Even the shopkeepers who had once eyed Violet with suspicion now brought gifts and well wishes, completely won over by the obvious devotion between the McKinnons. As summer faded into autumn once more, Violet sat on the porch with Ellie sleeping in her arms, watching Vaughn work with the horses in the corral. He looked up, caught her watching, and smiled that special smile that was reserved only for her. 2 years ago, she had been left for dead on the prairie, her future stolen along with her possessions. Now she had a home, a husband who adored her, a beautiful daughter, and a place in a community that had come to respect and even admire her. Later that evening, as they put Ellie to bed in the nursery Vaughn had built adjoining their bedroom, Violet leaned against her husband's solid frame. Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out, she asked, if you hadn't found me that day? I try not to, he admitted, his arm tightening around her waist. But I do thank God every day that I took that particular trail at that particular time. The townsfolk still talk about it, you know. Mrs. Harrison at the Mercantile told me yesterday that she thinks our story is the most romantic thing she's ever heard. Vaughn chuckled. If only she knew it began with me proposing a loveless marriage of convenience. It wasn't loveless for long, Violet reminded him, turning in his arms to look up at him. And I wouldn't change a single moment of our story. Not even the beginning, she considered this, then shook her head. Not even that. Every step of the journey brought us here, to this life we've built together. Vaughn kissed her softly. Then here's to our unconventional beginning and our very conventional happiness. Outside their window, the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple. Within the walls of the home they had created together, Violet and Vaughn McKinnon, once strangers brought together by violence and necessity, held their sleeping daughter and each other, their love story continuing to unfold with each passing day, far more extraordinary than any tale the townsfolk could imagine.